Hi everyone. For this lesson, I'm going to be talking about regrouping or borrowing for three-digit subtraction. So when we have three-digit subtraction, sometimes our top number doesn't have enough. So there's a few different ways I like to talk about it. So we'll go into our first example and get to those. So when we're looking at number 1, it says 678 minus 245. So what I like to think is if we have, or we're going to always look for if we have more on top, no need to stop. That means we don't have any regrouping. We can just subtract straight down. But if there's more on the floor, that means our bottom number is bigger. We have to go next door. And when we go next door, we take one away and we add 10 more. Because when we go next door, if we're thinking about our ones place, and we go next door to the tens, if we take 110 away, that 10, we can chop it up into 10 ones. So that's why we add 10. So if we look at number 1, it has 678 minus 245. We look at 8 minus 5. There's more on top because 8 is bigger, so there's no need to stop. We can just subtract that. So 8 minus 5 is going to be 3. Then we have 7 minus 4. So 7 minus 4 is 3. And then we have 6 minus 2. And 6 minus 2 is 4. So my difference, my answer to this problem is 433. Remember, when we are subtracting, we're finding the difference between two numbers. That's what we call our answer. Now, in that one, we didn't have to borrow or regroup. We just could subtract straight down because the 8 was bigger than the 5, the 7 is bigger than the 4, and the 6 is bigger than the 2. So we were able to take away from each of those place values without having to regroup or borrow. Now let's look at number 2, though. If I have 857 minus 319, when I started my ones place, I have 7 minus 9. And when I have 7 minus 9, my 9 is bigger. That means that I have more on the floor, more on that bottom. That means that we have to go next door. So when I go next door, I go to my 5 and I take 1 away. So when I take 1 away from my 5, I'm left with a 4. I've taken 110 away. I've now cut up that 10 and made it into 10 ones. So I'm going to add those to my tens column. So my 7 plus my 10 is going to become 17. Now I have 17 minus 9, so I have more on the top, so there's no need to stop. So 17 minus 9 is going to give us a difference of 8. Now we're done with our ones, we can move on to our tens. We have 4 minus 1, which gives us 3. And then we move on to our hundreds. We have 8 minus 3, which equals 5. So my difference here is 538. Okay, so that's where we had to borrow or regroup from our tens so that we had more ones. Now let's look at number 3. We have 538 minus 119. If I go to my ones place, I have 8 minus 9. If I only have 8, I can't take away or give away 9. That means that there's more on the floor. So I have to go next door. I take 1 away from my 3, so my 3 becomes a 2, and I add 10 more to my 8. So 8 plus 10 gives me 18. So remember, if you have to go next door, you take 1 away and you add 10 more. So you're adding that 10 more to the one that's smaller on top. We can't just add 10 and not take away, because that's just creating numbers that aren't there. We have to take one away first. So I want you guys to make sure that you take away first and then add your 10. That way you don't forget to do that step. And then you're not just adding extra numbers in that you aren't there originally. So when we take away from the one next door, we're taking that 110 and we're chopping it into 10 ones. Okay? So now we have our 10 ones plus our 8 that we already had. We have our 18. We can do 18 minus 9. And because we know our doubles, 18 minus 9 equals 9. Then we have our tens column, 2 minus 1, which equals 1. Then we have 5 minus 1, which equals 4. So my difference here, my answer is 419. Okay? So now let's move on to number 4. And remember, we want to always remember more on top, no need to stop. More on the floor, we have to go next door. And when we go next door, we take one away and you add 10 more. So let's look at number 4. We have 525 minus 293. So we start in our ones place. We have 5 minus 3. Well, there's more on top, so no need to stop. So 5 minus 3 equals 2. Now we go to our tens column. We have 2 minus 9. And when I do 2 minus 9, I can't do that because there's more on the floor. So I have to go next door. This time, we need more in our tens column. So we have to go over to our hundreds. We go next door to our 5. I have to take one away first. My 5 becomes a 4. And then I add 10 more. So we think about our 100. If I take 100 and I chop it up, I can chop it into 10 tens. So we think about it. If we count by tens to 100, we have 10 of them. So when I add my 10 more to my 2, I get 12. Now I have 12 minus 9, which equals 3. Then I move to my hundreds, and I have 4 minus 2. And 4 minus 2 equals 2. That means that for this problem, my difference is 232. Okay, let's also look at number 5. We have 679 minus 261. If I have 9 minus 1, there's more on top, no need to stop. So 9 minus 1 is 8. Then I go to my tens. I have 7 minus 6. Again, more on top, no need to stop. 7 minus 6 is 1. Then I go to my hundreds column. 6 minus 2, which equals 4. On that problem, we didn't have any regrouping. And you're not always going to have to regroup or borrow from the column next door. So sometimes you can just subtract straight down. So remember that we always want to check if there's more on top, there's no need to stop. But if there's more on the floor, we have to go next door. And to do that, we take one away and we add 10 more. So if there's more on top, there's no need to stop. We don't have to do any borrowing or any regrouping. All right, let's look on number 6 and 7. We got to remember, if there's more on top, no need to stop. If there's more on the floor, though, we have to go next door. Okay, so for number 6, we have 538 minus 119. When we start in our ones column, you can see that all of my numbers are lined up. And when you're working these out and practicing these on your own, you want to make sure that you've lined up your place values. And if our numbers aren't lined up, we're not going to be subtracting the correct place values. And we can't take tens away from ones or hundreds from ones. We have to make sure our ones are lined up together, tens are lined up together, and hundreds are lined up together. So when we start in our ones column, we have 8 minus 9. Well, that I see is we can't do it because we have more on the floor. So we have to go next door. I take one away. My 3 becomes a 2. And I add 10 more. So my 8 becomes an 18. And you can see that I'm trying to be very neat with my numbers, keeping them straight above so that they don't get mixed up with which numbers I'm talking about. So now I have 18 minus 9. And again, that's our double, so we know 18 minus 9 is 9. Then we go to our tens. 2 minus 1, which is 1. And then we have our hundreds, 5 minus 1, which is 4. So my difference for number 6 is 419. All right, we have one more. We're going to look at number 7. 331 minus 148. We start in our ones column. 1 minus 8. And if I do 1 minus 8, I can't give you 8 if I only have one of something. So I have more on the floor, so I have to go next door. I take 1 away from my 3, becomes a 2. And my 1, I add 10 more to, so it becomes 11. Now 11 minus 8, I have more on top, so I have no need to stop. So 11 minus 8, which gives me 3. Now I'm going to go to my tens column. I want you to really pay attention to this. In my tens column, I now have 2 minus 4. There's still more on the floor. So I have to go next door again. And if I go next door again, this 3 in the hundreds place becomes a 2 because I've taken 1 away, and I have to add 10 more to my 10. So my 2 is now going to become a 12. Sometimes you may see people just adding a 1 in front of the 2, or you can cross it out and rewrite the 12 above. Either is fine as long as you're neat with it and you know that you've added 10 more to that number. So now 12 minus 4 we can do, and that gives us 8. And I go to my hundreds column, and I have 2 minus 1, which equals 1. So my difference here is 183. So these are just a few examples of borrowing in our hundreds, from our hundreds, borrowing from our tens, or possibly even borrowing from both. And sometimes you don't even have to borrow at all. So we have to really make sure that we remember our saying, if there is more on the top, no need to stop. If there's more on the floor, we have to go next door. When we go next door, we have to take 1 away, and we have to add 10 more. And if you remember that little saying, that should help you a lot when you're doing your subtraction. So I hope that this has helped you. And if you have any more questions, check out other videos on my channel. And I hope that these help as well.